Legacy is what you pass down to your children and to your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone. Many hope to create it. Many more hope to live up to it. Very few ever succeed. The legacy of this show hopes to be about what Westeros means to us, and what we hope it may mean to a new generation of fans, and the generation after that. Boasting discussions that will endure, passions that will rise, debates that will make the small council jealous. With a combined 44 years of experience behind a microphone, the hosts and guest hosts of this show are dedicated to the fans' experience interviewing anything from Westeros, Essos, and beyond. This group is not the house of a lion, a direwolf, or even a dragon. This is a fraternity, a lineage, a house that endures beyond sigils, and aims to leave a legacy no other podcast has. So it's time to call the Banos, for this is the House of the Empire.
What is up, everybody? It is time once again for another episode of House of the Empire, talking about that hit Game of Thrones show, House of the Dragon. We've got an awesome panel lined up for you tonight, and it's going to be a rousing discussion talking about episode 3, also titled Second of His Name. It's going to be very, very interesting because to me, this felt like a sandwich episode, and I'll get to what that means in just a bit here. But there was a lot of very, very interesting dialogue, some very interesting action sequences, and a lot of very interesting character development. So we're going to touch on all of that and so much more here on this episode. To help me break down this episode and to talk about the series as a whole for a few minutes off of the top here, let's welcome back Kieran. Dude, what did you make of this episode? Like, in 60 seconds, what would your initial impressions of episode 3 be?
Honestly, to me, it was the worst of the 3 so far, and it's kind of trending down for me, so I'm not abandoning the ship or anything like that, but wasn't really a big fan of a lot of things going on here. I don't know. I feel like we need some characters who are you know what? Here's the biggest thing. It sorely lacked Daemon Targaryen talking. I feel like the most important thing is for the most important character, the only one that I find interesting so far, to talk. And we saw him fight, but I was kind of disappointed by this episode. I'm hoping you guys are all optimistic about it, because I hate when we're all pessimistic about something. But yeah. Kind of trending down, I would say. I don't want to say anything bad. Trending down.
Interesting. Johnny, is it trending down for you, or did you have different thoughts from
No,
Kieran?
it's definitely not trending down for me. I mean, were there parts of this episode that I wish had been done differently? Yes, absolutely. But overall, this episode was more world building than anything else. They mixed in a lot of action, which to this point we haven't seen. We got to see, to this point, I think that's the third or fourth different dragon we've seen, with Sea Smoke. And, I liked seeing different dragons and other, dragon riders. And, I like the character development. I have, a bit more advanced. I don't think Kieran specifically knows the history and the lore, so he doesn't quite know
I don't know where things are going at all.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it paints a different picture because I can see other elements and other story things that I know from the lore and the history starting to building up, and it's like, okay, this is where the good stuff starts. This is where it starts getting fun, and I like those things. I like sort of expanding on, Sean said on the show several times that we can't just go by the book, because the book is told from specific points of view that aren't the most reliable. So you don't have truth, and you can see that sort of playing out here, where things from the lore are different than what we actually see play out, and yet at the same time it makes sense in a well, yeah, I could see it playing out this way, but being regarded this way, and it's interesting. It's fun seeing the way these things play out. I mean, do I have a specific gripe in this episode? Yes, and we'll, I'm sure, get to that later on. But I liked it overall. To Kieran's point that Damon didn't talk much. He talked a lot, but he talked through action. And that's a big thing for me. Like,
but I mean, like, talk like with your mouth, like the thing that
I understand. I understand the point you're making, but to me, he did more talking through action than through speech, and speech would have actually been detrimental to the things he accomplished in that episode, at least in my opinion.
People in the Marvel universe talk all the time while they're fighting. It's awesome. They make jokes.
And you talk about something trending downhill? Really?
No, I would totally not want. I totally would not want him making quips while he's burning people on his dragon. Yeah, for sure.
We did that already. It's called Doctor Who.
We are not talking about She-Hulk tonight, fellas. Just putting that out there.
To be
Damn,
clear,
and here I was getting ready to twerk.
my
Why
reference
not?
is all of Marvel for like the last few years. So,
There's only one Megan the Stallion. Oh my god.
I'm going to cut in here for a second. I agree with what Johnny's saying completely, actually. Matt Smith's acting in this, correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I told you guys before we went on air, I had to pause it like probably realistically 5 or 6 times, and it took me about 2.5 hours to get through the episode. Because it was bad. I don't think he doesn't say a word, right?
He talks at the beginning.
Does he say
he
doesn't
talks,
speak, but it's very, very, very little. I want to say it's less than a minute total speaking time.
But
across
when
the
we
whole episode.
so he
talks during the planning part a little bit.
Yeah.
Wait, does he?
Well,
The
it beats the
planning at
shit
the
out of a guy. I know
No,
that.
I don't think he says a word
at that
he's
part,
not
no,
saying
but he had
that
spoken
word.
earlier.
And I think it's done so incredibly, because even when he's reading it, the letter, it's not his voice, it's him hearing Viserys's voice in his head and his reaction to it and what he goes and does. I'm actually stunned that Kieran doesn't like this episode particularly, because I thought the action in this episode made some of Game of Thrones look not very good. I was blown away by the action at the end of the episode. I thought Matt Smith, I'm sure a lot of it was a stunt guy. I thought the way that they handled it was so wonderfully done. And I loved the horror movie elements to it, where he goes into the tunnel. We don't see the fight, but he comes out with the crab feeder there.
A third of him?
Yeah, a third of them, basically. I loved this episode. Now, I haven't seen it all together, and I do think it might be the weakest of the 3. But I think it's the weakest of the 3 because I think the parts that are bookended needed a little bit more time in the episode. But it is lore building. There are a lot of hints in this episode where certain things are going. Some of them rather on the nose, which I was kind of surprised about. Unless they don't go that way, of course. But all in all, I thought it was a really, really well put together episode. And dare I say, the visual components of this episode made me believe it was Sapochnik that directed it. And I don't believe it was, because I think he's 167 this year. And all the shots where they have King's Landing, like far in the background, Game of Thrones needed to utilize that more. And I don't know if the technology was available to them then. But like there are several incredible shots in this episode. The action's there, and it was really, really good. I don't have too much to complain about, other than maybe there were some pacing issues with the episode. But I also took 2.5 hours to watch it. So, Zach, and where are you with the episode?
It was your pacing that had the issue.
Probably.
Maybe not the show that had pacing issues.
That's fair.
I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed the second episode, but that's really not that hard to accomplish, because if y'all watched my my review on the previous episode, I had some pretty legitimate gripes about it that resulted in like a 7.5 out of 10 or something, which
Which
is
is still a good score, people. By the way,
it's still a decent score, but by math standards, that's 3 out of every 4 questions correct. So I mean, like it missed the mark a lot more than I expected Game of Thrones to, and there were times in this episode that I felt like they were also missing the mark. Um, haven't really quite decided on what number I would give it out of 10 yet. It's definitely not a 9, but I don't know exactly like where I'm going to put it yet. I'm hoping the conversation tonight gives me some clarity. I enjoyed certain aspects of it, and then there were certain parts that I felt like could be cleaned up a little bit, or could have been written or executed a little bit better, or some things that maybe needed a little bit more exposition that didn't, or some places that could have used dialogue and didn't have it. You know, just little things like that that kind of added up over time. I do enjoy the stuff that happens on the Stepstones. I wish that we had had more of it, because that was the stuff from the episode 3 trailer at the end of episode 2 that got me the most excited for this week, was the stuff that was transpiring on the Stepstones. Honestly, at this point, I've got enough character exposition that I want the King's Landing drama to be the B story, and I want to see stuff happening on the Stepstones. I want to see stuff happening in other parts of Westeros. Like, I'm ready for like a tonal shift to where the drama and the picking and choosing and all that other bullshit is not the A story anymore. It's been the A story for 3 episodes now, and I think it's time for a change. And we just haven't gotten it yet. So it may just be personal gripes more than technical gripes, but it was a solid episode, but I think episode 1 is still my favorite.
I think the pilot is just. Whenever you have Miguel Sapochnik involved into this franchise, even the much critical season 8, you don't hear people complaining about the visuals or how well the episodes are put together in Game of Thrones season 8 for the long night, other than it might have been too dark at the beginning. I think episode 5 is called The Bells. Obviously, people don't like a certain direction a character takes, but he just does a wonderful job putting it together. So I do think it's almost unfair to other people that come in, because he's just so highly regarded in terms of that. But I think it's important for everybody to remember that they've been very upfront with saying, in terms of this series specifically, Rhaenyra and Alicent and Daemon's story, that this is a prologue. The first 5 episodes is the prologue to the actual story. And I know that's a really hard thing to grasp, because that's typically not how these things are built. And there's a transitioning coming that I don't know how well is going to be received. There's a lot of people that have fallen in love with Millie Alcock. And because of that, there's probably a potential for flashbacks next season with all the skipping we've done. But Emma Darcy, and I forget is it Olivia Cook who's playing Alicent, the older Alicent?
Yep.
Let me tell you, they better deliver their A game, because they have a lot to live up to. Like I have a pit in my stomach going, oh, if you don't match her performance in terms of quality, eesh.
I'm honestly like, I have nothing against the acting performances of either of those, either of the 2 women that we've seen. But those characters, so I have no problems visually with anything that's happened so far. I like the dragons. I really like Daemon's dragon and how it looks kind of like some kind of lizard or whatever. Like it's just like, I love how the legs kind of like flail out, and they're, I don't know, it's almost got like frog looking legs and stuff like that. It's different. It's definitely way different than you would think a dragon would look like. It's definitely its own thing. But I think it's cool. I like it. I love seeing it soar through the air, and I thought we got some of the best shots of the dragon in this episode, which was great. Nothing visually for me, like no visual problems with me so far. Like I like pretty much everything. Like I said before, the armor is amazing. Although one small gripe, all the Kingsguard look like Magneto now, and it's bothering me. They all got Magneto helmets. It's like, just can't.
Middle.
I noticed it halfway through this episode, and I thought Magneto was in every scene. It bothered me, but that. I mean, I got a big X-Men tattoo, so that's only probably me be griping about so much. Now, if they could get Michael Fassbender in this episode, it would make up for it. Yeah, so I just want to make sure you guys know no visual complaints for me. It's all character stuff for me. I think that Damon is a great character so far. I'm like riveted when I see him on the screen. Every other character I could give a shit about so far. Like, don't care for any of them. They don't rivet me. I'm not really interested to see where they're going. They're layered in a way. Like they're it's not like they're written poorly. I don't know. Just don't really care if any of them win or do good or whatever. They could all die next week and I'd be like, cool, new crop of characters, please. That's obviously not going to happen. And the characters are going to get built on, and hopefully, since they are such layered characters, or at least Game of Thrones characters normally are very layered and end up going somewhere they didn't start, hopefully I'll pick up on the train there somewhere, but I really don't care about any of the characters.
Man, I'm bummed for you. Legitimately, I am. I thought that you would have gravitated a little bit towards like the Viserys Otto Hightower situation with those two, and the very clear manipulation that's going on. I also, Johnny was speaking earlier about different lore from the books. I thought that this episode, without diving into spoilers about the book, this episode presented Alicent Hightower in a way that I did not expect to see. I always kind of expected her character to be kind of black and white for the most part, or at least becoming that. And I thought they did a good job in this episode of showing that, despite her being with her former best friend's dad, that there was some nuance to the character, and that she had legitimate concerns still about Rhaenyra. And I thought at this point of the game it would be not that. So I think that part alone is already one of the big differences that we're seeing from the lore. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. We've seen the older actresses and how they get into it in the throne room in the trailer. So I just didn't think it would be like that. So I'm curious to see where they're going with it. And it also has me curious what other changes are going to be there, because there's definitely changes coming for sure.
I still don't get why they insist on spending so much time at the Godswood tree. Like, pretty much everything that's happened at the Godswood, I have not cared for. From the pilot where Alicent's kind of quizzing her and Rhaenyra is just kind of blowing it off. And now she somehow, some way seeks solace. Like, that is her spot. And you have that pissing contest between Order of Your Princess versus Order of Your Queen for the Royal Minstrel. Like, unnecessary. I didn't need that. I didn't want that. I didn't care for that. And honestly, like, we're getting more screen time for the tree of the Stark ancestors than we are of actual House Stark. And maybe that's what's pissing me off. Is
Patience, my friend. Patience.
We have hardly anything from other big houses other than what's on the small council. And
this world, this one.
There's a lot of Lannisters in this one.
We have too many Lannisters in this one, but it took 2.5 episodes to get there, and even then, all they play is the role of, oh, I want to woo the princess kind of thing. And did y'all notice who was playing the Lannister twins?
I
think
did.
we all noticed. I think we all got it.
What the hell is he doing here? He died like 10 years ago.
Well, there's a couple of references to him that relate to this channel specifically. Is one, he is the main podcaster that kicks off Halloween 2018. His name's Aaron. Michael Myers crushes his skull. But two, he also gets fucked up by the mountain in Game of Thrones. So when I see it, I'm just like, wait, what? You're gonna reuse actors? Okay, so who else are we gonna see? Maybe not some of the big guys, but like he had a part for like I think he was in an episode or two.
I think it was just the
sense,
one.
though, right? Was he a Lannister in previous show?
No, he was a
okay.
squire. He was John Aaron's squire. He was from the Vale.
Oh, I don't remember that, and I probably just watched it not too long
He
ago.
was John Aaron's squire.
Since I watched 4 seasons of Game of Thrones this week.
Yeah, he was the Knight of the Vale that got killed by the mountain in season 1.
Okay, yeah, I do remember that. Okay.
During the jousting tournament. I also love how much Twitter is roasting Robert Baratheon, talking about how the man was broke as shit because of the way his jousting tournaments look compared to the ones that the Targaryens host. I was like, they probably weren't intending it to be that way, but considering how much debt the crown was in around that time, it's probably not inaccurate that Baratheon was broke as shit during that tournament.
To be fair, Ned did not want that tournament to happen for that reason, so it's pretty much explained. He's like, we don't have money for a fucking tournament. And they're like, we have to have a tournament, so...
Before we move on to the rest of the episode and Zach takes us the rest of the way here, I just want to point out that Johnny mentioned the lore changing, so I don't view this as a spoiler because I don't necessarily know that it's going to happen this season, but if they're following the story somewhat closely, and to the moment they are, but there's some subtle changes, then Winterfell is absolutely a thing and does get involved in this story. And I'm curious how that'll be depicted. And I would love to see Winterfell during this time period. The Godswood thing worries me a little bit because it's kind of like, okay, I mean, we've already heard a bunch of Game of Thrones references in this show. Did they go deep enough that we see friggin' Bran pop up at some point? We already have heard rumors of Melisandre possibly popping up because she's still alive during that time.
Why would it be a problem that Bran show up?
You don't think that would be taken away from it? I kind of feel like that's where, maybe not Bran, but someone. I feel like they're really, really trying to tie this thing in as close as possible to that.
Is Max Sydow still alive? Could he make a three-eyed raven appearance?
I think. I'm pretty sure he passed away. But before I accidentally kill anybody, maybe I should check that.
Imagine like Hodor's great-great-great-grandpa is also saying Hodor now.
Yeah,
he did. That's how badly he fucked him up.
See, he was one of those 2020 deaths when everything was COVID was killing everybody. So yeah, he's gone. Huh.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I literally just did a quick Google search and was like, "Oh shit, he's not here anymore." Okay, so if there was to be a three-eyed raven appearance, it would have to be Bran then, which I'm probably not too thrilled about. I would have much rather preferred the predecessor three-eyed raven, but
I was just trying to get Sean to see if he hates Bran. I know lots of people hate Bran.
Kind of neutral on Bran.
Okay.
I got no problem with Bran the character. I got no problem with Bran the king of the king.
Yeah, and a lot of people hate on that actor too, and I don't think that's fair either. The same way people hated on.
No, he played the character the proper way.
Yeah, same people hated on Jack. I think his name's Jack Gleason, who played Joffrey. Like those guys didn't
Just got married.
Yeah, I seen pictures too. Guy looks charming as fuck.
He was
really?
amazing. He did his job. You hated him. He was the
the
most hated person on the planet at that time, so he did his job really well.
Yep.
But
Some
I
people
don't
out there
credit for that. Like, it's
you should. They should.
Well, that's the problem, though. There were too many people who couldn't separate the performance from the person, right? And that's it's horrible to say that people are like that, but let's be honest, we all know somebody who acts like that, who can't separate reality from fiction and characters and with movies and TV shows. And I'm not going to name names, but
Yeah.
We all know somebody who's like that.
I mean, I personally had that problem with The Office for a long time. It took me listening to the Office Ladies podcast and like
Oh, I'm
listening
sorry. John Krasinski is Jim. You'll never change my mind. Don't
whole
even try.
whole bunch of episodes talking about like the behind the scenes and the shooting and stuff before I finally realized, oh, this is not how these people actually behave. Like there are so many characters in that
Only
show.
some of them. I mean, Creed is really Creed.
Creed is pretty much Creed, but like they would bring in Rainn Wilson for interviews. They would talk about the way that Steve Carell was kind of like the group dad when they were in between scenes and like making sure everybody was all right and stuff. And after I'm hearing some of these anecdotes, I'm like, okay, Steve wasn't like in full Michael Scott mode all the time. Like he was definitely playing a character, but he played it so damn well
Well,
that
I mean,
for a
he
while I
was
didn't
Michael
like
Scott, just not crazy. He was Michael Scott when he was doing his job well,
Mhm.
not doing half-cock crazy shenanigans. But I think we've talked enough about The Office.
Probably. Let's talk about some of the some of the sequences that took place out of The Office, if you will. We don't really have a whole lot that's happening at the Red Keep. A lot of this episode is centered around the hunt that's going on, and it's not just any hunt. It's a name day hunt. It's a birthday hunt, and it's really funny because my fiance Edna is Hispanic, and she made a lot of really interesting connections to this episode because I was like, this kid is what, 2 years old?
Second name day, yep.
His second name day. This kid is 2 years old. He's not going to remember this field trip. He's not going to remember this hunt. He's not going to remember anything that happens at this celebration, but it's an excuse for the crown to go out and let the king go on a hunt and let the men be men and the women be women and all this other bullshit that's happening. And she's like, you know what? This kind of reminds me of my nephew's birthday because he just turned 2 and most of it was the adults drinking beer and playing music and then like singing the happy birthday song to him. And then they all had cake. And it was like, he's not going to remember any of it, but the adults sure had a damn good time.
I mean,
And I'm like-
Rhaenyra said exactly that when she was talking to Jason, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, I did you have a party like this? I don't remember, and neither will he.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. This whole thing is a giant charade put on by the crown to kind of, you know, show off their wealth and influence and power and whatever else. And then it also kind of comes to light that Viserys was kind of using it as like an informal way for suitors to get to know Rhaenyra without it seeming like they were trying to court her. But then, of course,
That went over well.
that didn't go over very well because Rhaenyra is like fucking smart enough to figure that shit out. And of course, the Lannisters not very subtle in this time period. And so,
I'm sorry,
She's like,
subtle and Lannisters are two words that never go together.
I mean,
she's like Jasmine in Aladdin.
yeah, I can see those parallels. I can see those.
This whole goddamn thing so far has been very Disney-ish to me.
Disney with Pirates of the Caribbean type dudes on the islands, and then like
What, you
Aladdin.
mean the crab feeder couldn't have been a villain in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Oh, he absolutely could have been. He absolutely could have been. Like, I think the only thing we're missing is like a Davy Jones type of character with tentacles coming out of his cheeks, or maybe crab arms because he's the crab feeder.
Well, we're only on episode 3.
Yeah, and this did have a pretty decently sized budget, so who knows? What did y'all? Okay, this is a really weird thing, but this and it's very innocuous probably, but to me it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. The idea of gifting a golden spear with like tassels on the end of it seemed so impractical. And is it just me who saw that as a weird flex to gift that to the king for the final blow, so to speak?
What do you?
Like, am I looking into that too much? Because I
what do you
honestly
get for a
thought
king?
I think thinking too much into it because the purpose of it was to, you know, kill a trapped animal. Like that's the thing. Like this isn't. There's no sport in this hunt. It's a trap the creature and then stab it when it can't move any further. Like this,
See, I don't know if
sport
it's
in it.
supposed
So
to be.
making
know.
the spear
go ahead.
look like a giant golden. It's basically a giant golden cock measuring contest. Like make the biggest, most eye obstructing thing possible, and present it to the king because we're fancy and we have gold and we're rich and we can provide you things.
I feel like the reason they did the hunt this way and why they didn't actually let the king go hunt with them is because he physically cannot, and I feel like that's part of the story that they were telling. As a guy who is kind of laboring, the performance that Patty Considine's putting on from episode 1 to episode 3, which I believe, how much time was in between episode 1 and 2 again? 6 months?
6 months.
6 months, and now we're
3 years later. 3 years. So
Yeah.
3 years, 6
We've
months.
we've
from-
gone 3.5 years since the pilot.
So in 3.5 years, and he was already wounded at the beginning, it's slowly taking its toll. It's slowly getting worse. It's in his performance. And by the way, he's not
Missing
young.
2 fingers.
When this show starts off, he's 36. I know people get thrown off by the white hair. He's not old. He's fairly young dude. And he's ill, and I don't think that's why he goes on the hunt. In terms of the spear, though, I just looked at it as a very snobby season 1 Jamie Lannister thing to do. Hey, we're the Lannisters, we have gold, so here's this just fucking ridiculous over the top spear. It seemed very Lannister to me, so I thought it fit, but that didn't mean that I liked it. I didn't like the character. I didn't like it. They came across like the snobby Lannisters from season 1, and maybe that's how they're supposed to be, but
it's the way Lannisters are.
Yeah, spears, like lots of medieval spears and stuff like that have tassels and stuff on them. Like that, I don't think that was weird at all. Like,
they were just they were excessive.
I've seen weapons like that. I mean, it was like that, but it was like a ceremonial.
Yeah.
Like
it wasn't meant to be taken into combat.
What do you buy a king, right? Like here, we're on a hunt. Here's a really cool spear. Like, yeah, kill the stag with it, and then hang it up on the wall beside the head after.
What did you guys think of the white stag literally presenting itself to Rhaenyra?
That was going to be my next question, because that was one scene that I wish it had a little bit more exposition, but I also really enjoyed it, especially looking at like some of the comment threads that were on social media immediately after. Like even nature is selecting Rhaenyra as its queen, and that's really telling. So I enjoyed it. I just wish we'd had a little bit more of it.
I thought the best part of this episode was just the king's speech by the fire, talking about how he felt about Rhaenyra, and like explaining. Like it really brought the character a lot of depth, explaining like what happened, and I thought this was gonna happen, and then that happened, and like talking to Rhaenyra and being like, not necessarily saying like I'm having a son so that I can pass you up. Like I like say you're not like he admitted that like at one point maybe he thought about it, but like he does think that she will be a good queen. So I thought that was interesting.
That's when we get back to the Red Keep, isn't it? That's once we get back to King's
Yeah, that's later. But it starts off with him talking by the big bonfire late at night, and kind of like
when he's talking to Strong, right? Is it Alan?
No,
is it Alan or is it Strong?
He talks to Alicent. He talks to Alicent at the bonfire, and he speaks to Strong from his throne.
I feel like I'm getting stuff mixed up here. But anyways, the storyline in total, I thought was the most interesting part of this episode.
We get to see the king in a different light, which you get to sit. He isn't, he doesn't want to throw Rhaenyra out. Like he's feeling the pressure to name Aegon the heir, and just won't do it.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah. When he's on the throne, you're right. He the guy's like, yeah, because your new son's gonna be your new heir, and he's like, I didn't fucking say that, and he starts to get a little bit pissy about it, right?
Yeah, that was with Otto, I think.
I think
No,
he.
that was with the Lannister that gave him the spear.
I think he was also.
I guess that it happened multiple times.
Yeah, that conversation was one that recurred a couple of times.
But that was the general point was that everybody's expecting this of him, and he's like, even though it kind of steered in the way to make you think that might be what he was thinking. The king was like, no, like I think she's going to be a good queen. Like,
I think we are mishmashing a bunch of different conversations because
for sure.
With the council, I think they mostly talked about who to marry off Rhaenyra to, right? Like, because Otto suggested a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Well,
he just wants her.
Marry your daughter to your son. Do that.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And Sir Strong said, he said to Sir Strong, and who would you have her marry? Your son? And he said, no. She should marry who I told you to marry. Only not the daughter. Marry the son.
Mm-hmm.
He sent her towards Lena? Something with a lay.
The Valerians.
Lena is the daughter.
The son also is a lay.
Laenor, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, we saw him in this episode.
I swear.
Yeah,
I always mute myself.
We saw two sons, right?
Yeah.
No, one son.
Were they both sons, cousin. Or were they?
No.
Son and grandson.
There was Corlys and his cousin,
brother. I think.
Brother. Well, I thought Corlys said cousin.
Maybe
his brother and his son.
Because I'm pretty sure Corlys said, "I know you're my cousin, but blood something."
There may have also been a cousin there, but in the wiki description it says that Vaemond is Corlys's brother.
Okay, yeah, I mean that could have just been.
There may have been multiple Valerians.
It may have been a different character talking
on this show. He could be both.
But fair enough. That could I could entirely be wrong. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think that I think
it's Laenor. He's a dragon rider. That was him riding the dragon at the end too.
Laenor.
Yeah, we saw Laenor call. I think Laenor did call him uncle. What have you done in this battle, uncle?
Mm-hmm.
Or something to that effect.
Right.
So,
which he probably has the most right to say out of anyone, because it's basically him and Daemon and his mother that are doing the most. They're the three primary dragon riders that are a part of that fight. Like, they're in the trenches pretty much every day. What the fuck has Vaemond done? Except
has Rhaena actually rid of dragons? Isn't Rhaena's dragon dead at this point? I didn't think she'd bonded with her new dragon yet, but I could be wrong about that. I could be confusing the timeline.
If Rhaenys ever
she ends up riding Vhagar, I think,
which is the next biggest one to Balerion.
Yeah, which is the missing dragon right now.
Yeah. And who we know is in it. We've seen the dragon in the trailer. So, actually, I thought that was going to happen this episode at the end when Daemon's there in the circle. I thought for sure that was that moment, but I guess not. But
I was happy that it wasn't. Right, it saves the bigger dragon for a bigger moment, because this one was well served by being sea smoke and letting. There are certain things I don't want to say because Kieran doesn't know certain events of the future, but
I won't remember what you're saying. Don't worry about it.
Well, I don't want to take that chance, right? But seeing Laenor riding the dragon was a good thing. I like that.
I'm not saying get overly attached to Laenor's character. I do not know his fate. I have not looked into it, but I do know he's a character going forward, and he's one of the characters that obviously got an actor change because of the time jump. I believe his actor change has already happened. Like, that guy that we're seeing now is his actor moving forward. Where the guy in the first episode was not him. I think he was in episode 1 because it showed him with his sister.
I think he's still credited as young Laenor in this episode. I pulled up the IMDb and he's credited as young Laenor.
Curious. Maybe they have 3 different people play him then, because I could have sworn he was significantly younger.
I don't remember seeing him in episode 1.
her kids are there when they're watching the jousting happen.
I mean, then it couldn't have been.
Yeah,
Could it have been the other kids, like just not Laenor? Because I think they have 3 kids.
Do they? Okay, well then
I think there's 2 sons and a daughter.
all I know is characters in this show are having lots of children, and it's going to be very fucking hard to keep up with. So strap yourselves in. Because,
Oh my god, it's 10 years ago.
yeah, it'll be far more prominent, far more early. Like there's significant characters that we're going to meet this season that we haven't even really met yet. So it's a lot to keep up with. So I do think there's a chance for Kieran to still get attached to characters that he hasn't met yet.
This is the one point. I'm not down on it. Like I specifically mentioned to my wife when watching, I was like, I'm not really like clutched by it. I'm not hooked by this at all. I say, but it's like I'm still gonna watch it next week. I'm not like, yeah, I'm gonna pass. Like, and a lot of that is the fact that I know that this is like I said, this is the prologue. Like, which I think Johnny said as well. Like, I've always been treating it as that anyways because I know what's gonna happen, and I know that maybe this is like just some backstory and context to let you know when we get into the current day stuff that we're going to know like, oh, this person doesn't like that person because when they were 15 this happened, right? So we kind of know all that stuff, and I don't know how that's going to affect me. I don't know if that's going to make me think season 1 is like kind of like a like when all's said and done, am I going to be like, you don't need to watch those first 5 episodes as long as you know what's going on? Or am I going to go back to those and be like, oh, I'm picking up on stuff I didn't see before because, the current day is giving, adding to that. So I mean, I'm still giving it a chance. It's not like I'm anywhere near jumping off the boat or anything like that. But did I say something funny, Johnny?
No, you didn't actually. I just looked down at my phone, and apparently my brother can hear me recording because he sent me a text. It was Corliss's brother.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you,
Sir Teddy. Sir Teddy. We just knighted him. You've been officially knighted. If you can hear me,
as per the guy.
He can't hear you, but he can hear me.
Oh.
All right. Anyways, yeah. So like, not jumping off, not anywhere near that. But I'm just kind of watching right now. I'm watching because I know what this could be. If this was like a, not related to Game of Thrones at all, it's possible I could be jumping off right now. Like what was that show that they tried to be Game of Thronesy, Sands of Time or something like that, or Wheel of Time? I don't know.
I don't know.
It's on Amazon.
I think it's Wheel.
But they tried really hard to be Game of Thronesy and like jumped off after like 2-3 episodes. It was like,
I'll be honest. In terms of like just general public perception of the episode, or like the series so far, I know we're gonna give our thoughts on that at the end, but in terms of audience reception and turnout and numbers and how it's doing, HBO and Warner Brothers could not have asked for a better start than what they've gotten. They have struck gold again. I really hope it turns around for you. I do think there's a chance for that because there's some batshit crazy stuff coming. And I just hope everybody handles it well because
should be near the blacks and the greens.
Very soon. Very soon.
I'm on the wiki page and I can see the greens mentioned in a future episode. I'm not going to say how far, but the greens are like right in the episode description.
Just knowing when that happens in the timeline, you have to be close to it because it's within the next couple of years in canon timeline. So
it's the show. Like that's the basis of the show is the blacks versus the greens, basically.
Yeah.
And the division that comes, and I won't get any further into it. But I hope once that happens, that because I know Kieran's not alone in this. There's other people that are enjoying it, but it's just kind of like, it's not Game of Thrones for them. Where I'm sitting here going, a lot more stuff like this, and it definitely can be that. I think once that happens, you're going to draw the line in the sand, and it won't just be about how good the show is or the visuals or the acting performances. You'll have a legitimate stake in it because you're probably going to either be for the Greens or for the Blacks. And if you're not for either one, then maybe you're for the Maesters. Who the hell knows? But we'll see.
Who watches Game of Thrones for the fucking Maesters?
Oh man, the Maester in the Maester on the Wall is amazing now.
Yes, but you
I'm
don't.
watching season 5 and he's in it quite a bit. Well, season 4, season 5, he's in it quite a bit.
I'd
He's
like to
awesome.
meet someone who's Team Maester. Like that's just
Like, that's like watching an ER drama for the janitors. Like, there's all these other really prominent, important characters, and then there's this one guy over here in the back that shows up every now and then. Yeah, he's important, but he's just cleaning up everybody else's shit. Like,
I watch Bond movies. My favorite character is Q. Who's yours?
I watch Indiana Jones for Short Round.
So I just time-stamped this because we're definitely going to revisit this conversation down the line. And yeah, so.
Yeah,
Someone's
we'll talk
Team
about
Maester?
Short Round again
What?
next year.
Well, I mean, no, specifically, Johnny, if you've read the lore, you know the hand that those individuals have in the Targaryens.
Oh, they play a part. There's no doubt about that. But I mean, I don't watch it for their part.
Oh, for sure, no, but
I think that's more what I'm referring to than their importance. Because yes, they're hugely important. And if you
Oh,
But with
follow,
the Maesters.
if you're not green, if you're not Team Green or you're not Team Black, and for maybe you're just a diehard Samuel Tarly fan, and you're not Team Maester, who definitely has a part to play in this show, if they follow it,
I'm Team Break the Chains.
then you're probably not going to like it. So hopefully, once the team aspect of the show comes, I do think social media is going to be all. I think social media is already leaning into it without knowing what's coming. A lot of them, and I think once you get, for example, Twilight. Okay, whether you like those movies or not, you heard from someone. It was either Team Edward or Team Jacob. That was the talk, literally worldwide. Whether you watch the movies or not, it was on Facebook, MySpace, whatever. That will be what this show turns into. It will be the Black versus the Greens.
Just me purely guessing. I think it's going to be the Reds and the Greens, not the Reds and the Blacks. They're going to change the color representation for the Targaryen.
I hope not, because I think they've already done a fantastic job.
Well, they're going to keep the colors the same, but instead of picking black as the color to represent the team, they pick the red instead, because Team Black probably not going to trend for the reasons they'd want it to.
Imagine if Game of Thrones fans started usurping like certain hashtags. Oh man!
If you earlier in this episode, I mentioned a certain shot that we see in a trailer involving a couple of characters, and if you look at what they're wearing in that specific shot, it's a pretty big hint at what we're talking about right now. If you want to dive further into that, so I'd say go back, watch the trailers, and think about the colors we just mentioned. And there's definitely some very, very crucial parts where they're very, very noticeable.
Speaking of colors, there was definitely some blood that ran red in the camping sequence with Rhaenyra and Kristen. I was not expecting the threat to be like a feral hog, but considering things like Robert Baratheon from season 1 and considering the contrast between Rhaenyra's kill and her father's kill, I think there's definitely some between the lines storytelling that's going on there, not only from within the show, but also from without the show. It probably won't get discussed a whole lot on other shows, but I feel like it was at least worth mentioning that it's pretty important that Rhaenyra kills her own animal and basically walks into camp with it after her father's glorified
Covered in the blood
sport kill covered in the blood of her own kill. This woman is not afraid to get her hands dirty, and she is proving her worth in a lot more ways than what her father is trying to like fit her into the box of.
So Jade brought this point up to me as we were watching it, and she wanted me to bring it up on the show. So I'm glad Zach has beat me to it. She and both I perceived this moment here where she walks into the camp, and she's got a bunch of color, and it's a pretty badass moment. But for me, I read that moment as everybody looking at her up until that point, other than maybe the Kingsguard and the people that were there to see what she did with Daemon, as like, oh, she's just a snobby princess who wants her way and wants to be the first woman to sit on the Iron Throne, yada yada yada. But I perceive this moment to be like, oh shit, like she can actually just go out and handle her own fucking business, and her dad couldn't even kill a captured stag. Not really, anyway. I thought this was a very, very crucial moment in the show. And she said they weren't here for her. I would argue that moment was the biggest moment of the whole hunt, to be honest. And while they might not have been there for her, I think that image of her is the lasting impression that audience will take from that, in my opinion.
I don't think that's debatable at all. I agree completely that the thing that the sight you're going to remember is not the king missing the heart and having to stab it again. It's Rhaenyra coming back looking battle trodden with the corpse of a dead hog that, she killed herself. I mean, that Kristen's not taking credit for any of that. Like, this is her kill.
Oh yeah.
Yes, okay, he, delivered essentially the killing blow, but
it probably would have died without her help. But it probably would have eaten her too. So,
but nobody's gonna know about that. It's her with the dagger. That's the story.
Right. Kristen is definitely getting to know her well enough that he is more than willing to give her all the credit for the kill anyways. Like, nobody's going to ask him and he's going to be like, oh, it was actually me. Like, he's had enough conversations with her and knows enough about, who she is as a person that he's not going to try to supplant that, at least not at this juncture. And
this plays nicely into their future story.
Yes, it does. It really does. Like, that is one relationship that I did kind of look into, because after episode 2, where she was very selective of Sir Kristen being part of the Kingsguard, I was like, there's something there. So I did look into that.
Give him her favor in the first episode too.
Yep. And so I decided to look into that one a little bit, and it's interesting, to say the least, the way things are described to have played out versus how they may actually play out. Again, like we've been saying from the get-go, the source material is from sources that are somewhat unreliable, so they may not play out exactly the way we've read about it online or in the books, but what I have read, I've been intrigued by, and so I'm really curious to see how the rest of their relationship plays out.
There was definitely there was definitely a vibe there, but Rhaenyra coming back to the camp, my wife literally said out loud, she's like, she's a badass, and I was like, so that that's the point they're getting across. That's what the crowd was probably thinking too, right? So not only is the viewer getting that, but yeah, everyone else in tent who came out was like, fuck, she's a badass. So I think, I agree totally with what Sean said. And I think it was good to get that part across. And I do think there's definitely something going on there with Sir Kristen Cole, who is a very good-looking dude, anyways. So I kind of thought that was going to happen, anyways.
I dig it.
You see a dude like that in a TV show, and you're like, "Fuck, he's getting some ladies." God damn it!
I think you mean to say you see a guy like that in Game of Thrones, and you're like, "Yeah, he's getting some poon."
Yeah, I say that in real life too. If I'm just on the beach downtown, like I see some dude looking like that, got some decent muscles, going like, "Fuck, that guy's getting ladies."
I don't know the actor playing him, but I've really enjoyed the performance so far. With what little he hasn't had much to work with so far, and And
He
what he
stole
had,
the show in episode 2.
I thought he's done a very, very good job with the little that he's had. Yeah, I actually just sent Johnny a message on Messenger joking around. I won't say what it is, but I can't wait for people to realize that moment, dude.
No shit.
Zach, where
It was funny. You guys didn't even put the banners up. You would just further my love affair with him.
where are you with Kristen Cole, man? I know you're
Who,
very
me?
well, just everybody. Where's everybody with the character? Even though the character hasn't had a lot to work with, I thought that moment, like that whole scene with Rhaenyra and everything that went down there, not just the action portion of it, but like there's some subtlety and nuance to his role, or subtleness, pardon me, to his role, and nuance that I think I don't even know who I would compare it to on the main show for like someone that didn't get a lot of screen time, but whenever he was on screen, he was good. I don't know who I would pull out for that. But I think he's doing a lot with what he has to work with, and I'm enjoying the character so far.
I love the way. Sorry, Johnny. It'll be
No,
really
go ahead.
quick. I love the way he kind of put Rhaenyra in her place when she was bitching about the way her life sucked, basically. And he was like, being on the Kingsguard is the highest honor that my family has ever had. Everything that I have, I owe to you. And so I think you do have influence. And like the way that he was very like complimentary about it, but also saying, bitch, shut the fuck up at the same time was like really powerful, like expert communication skills right there.
I mean, to me, he
Please.
won me in episode 2. Like, going into this, I knew certain, way this play out, right? Because there's some things that you can change a lot of things, but there's some things you just kind of have to play out. And I think his arc was one of those ones that has to play out. Otherwise, it doesn't hit as well as it should. But he had so little in episode 1, and then episode 2 comes around, and you see him on the bridge with Daemon, and they have that moment, where Daemon calls him the wrong name, and he pipes back with, you remember me when I knocked your helmet off. He has that awesome comeback, and now here you see him in this episode where he does a lot with a little, and so I think Sean's actually very much on point with that. And I think if you want to compare him back to somebody from season 1, I think it's probably Gendry to this point, who does a lot with a little. It leaves a lasting impression without actually being in a lot of his scenes, and carries a certain significance to the overarching story.
The other one, if you were going all the way back to season 1, might be Jory. Is it Jory? Was that Ned's guy, Jory? Was that his name, or am I saying his name wrong?
I don't think he's that minor a character.
No,
though.
he's not. That character gets killed off quick. But to that point, he got like the screen time that he got was decent, and it was almost always important.
He was also on the bridge there. He was ready to jump in and crack Daemon on the bridge.
To be clear, he's
as
way
well, Dragonstone or whatever.
So
yeah.
Okay, speaking of Daemon, it takes a little while for the A story and the B story to end up converging. The hunt is basically its own storyline. We see a few minutes at the Stepstones at the beginning, and then we end up kind of circling back to the Stepstones after the hunt has concluded. And it takes Viserys a long time to kind of reach the conclusion that maybe I do need to send help to my brother. And he only sends like 10 ships, which, considering how many ships Corlys has lost over the last 3 years, I'm not really sure how much good just 10 ships is going to do, but he does eventually decide to send aid. And this is a two-parted question that I'm going to open up to the floor. I'm not going to single out anybody in particular, but point number one, what do you make of it taking him 3 years to reach that decision? 3 grueling, agonizing years before he finally decides to send help. And what do you make of Daemon's response, where he doesn't say it with words, but he basically says with actions, I'll be damned if my brother gets credit for the victory that I plan on achieving without his help. Like, it's a very weird dynamic because up until this point, Damon has kind of defended his brother, even if he disagrees with him. But now he feels ired by him and decides that he's going to go and strike out on his own so that Viserys can't claim any victory in this.
I think he always wanted to just be able to do it on his own. And at the end of the day, he does do it on his own. To my knowledge, those reinforcements
Never
didn't
showed up.
get there on time, which creates, future tension, I believe. Anyways, it looks like that in the trailer. And I don't know from Viserys' perspective why it took so long, other than the Otto Hightowers of the world being in his ear. It seems like basically his own whole council. He doesn't have anybody he can truly trust. So 3 years is a long time to wait.
What's ironic is he can probably trust Rhaenyra, but he doesn't trust her with council business.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
she's made some really badass moves and some really smart decisions up to this point, but he's not going to trust her with it.
I think we can kind of look at other parts of this episode and get to the point like why he would not make this decision was like they went out and did this without him. Like they were like, we're gonna take. He's like, nah, don't worry about the stepstones. They're like, no, we're gonna go do it anyways. And he doesn't want to be told what to do. He's the king. He doesn't like the fact that other people are constantly telling him you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And finally got through to him. But like he was saying, like these people, like he's like, why aren't you going to help them? He's like, because they went and did it. Like, this is not me. This is them. They went to go do that. Like, they're not making my decisions for me. They're not pulling me into this battle. They're not saying, like, fine, we're going to take the stepstones and then you're going to have to come and help us. Like, it's like, no, they fucked up on their own. They got to come back and ask me again, or they got to, obviously they weren't going to go ask the king. And yeah, so he was, I believe that's why it took so long, because he's like, nobody tells me what to do. I'm the king. Like, they told me 3 years ago they wanted to do this, and I said no, and they did it anyways. So they're not getting nothing from me.
I think I interpreted it more as you thought you could do it without me, so do it without me. You think I was important enough to be part of this from the beginning. You didn't wait for me. You didn't wait for the plan. You didn't, you just ran in head first. So fine, do it. And I think that's sort of like the pig-headedness of Targaryens. They dig their feet in, and they both did that. The king was eventually, untrenched, both through Alicent's, I don't want to say plea, but, logicking him into changing his mind. And, Daemon basically having the opposite reaction of, now you want to help? Now you want to do something? Well, we'll do it ourselves, because, there's finally a plan on the table that might actually achieve their goal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's too little too late, brother. Where was this a year ago when it could have actually helped? Now you're just getting in the way. That's how I sort of interpreted their, the way it played out.
It's also interesting that this campaign on a group of islands has been going on for multiple years. Like, this isn't just like one skirmish on one island. This is an ongoing endeavor.
3 years of open combat in a large area.
Something that even dragons haven't been able to maintain. That's kind of why the Targaryens are in power, is they're dragons. And they're utilizing dragons on the stepstones, and it's been ineffective.
Can I this is one of those things that I took umbrage with in this episode. They have ballistas that they can use to fire flaming arrows at ships. Why are they not aiming at dragons? Like, you see that at the beginning, and I'm thinking like they're just using, arrows. But, when that ship sort of comes in on fire, you then see another one hit with basically a flaming ballista, arrow. And it's like, why aren't you shooting at dragons with those? And then you see them later on literally just drawing back, regular arrows at dragons. Like, what are you doing?
I think they're trying to hit Damon there, but
Well, no,
when they're
but
hitting him with
even
the flaming arrows.
even when you see him riding on the dragon earlier, when he takes the arrow in the shoulder the
Yeah.
first time, they still just shooting regular arrows at a dragon. Like, that's gonna do something. Like, I don't know.
Well,
That was one of the things I just sort of took. Like,
when it's in bulk, I imagine so. Did y'all ever see the Russell Crowe movie Robin Hood? There's a scene in there.
I did.
There's a scene in there towards the end where they're standing up on a ledge, kind of like the crab feeders men are, and they fire a whole bunch of arrows in bulk, and it kind of comes over the ledge towards the opposing side, and the camera perspective is just basically watching the arrows come at you, and it's probably the best shot in the whole movie, not gonna lie. But the arrows in bulk, I think, is what they were going for, almost like a shotgun method, because I think at this point in time, dragons are a lot more versatile than a big ship. And you can aim those ballistas in the general direction of a ship and have a much better chance of getting it to its target than a very fast and versatile dragon can be. So if you shoot flaming arrows in bulk in kind of a shotgun dispersion as opposed to just a singular bullet, single arrow, I think that may have been what they were going for, because it took another couple hundred years before Qyburn's Scorpion was accurate enough to actually, be fast enough and on point enough to hit a dragon. So I think it's just a matter of how fast the dragons are versus how fast and accurate the ballistas may be.
Maybe. I had a kind of similar gripe to Johnny as well, so which I'm sure we'll get to soon.
Well, by all means, lay it on us now. We're coming up on the tail end of the episode.
No, honestly, I just couldn't get past the idea of Damon sprinting all the way across the island and killing several people on his own, not getting hit by any. Like the whole sequence, like in the end, was like especially after just sprinting for fucking ever to get there. Like I can't imagine, like, he had to be some sort of superhuman to be able to do that and then kill all these guys, and then like it seemed like he could have taken the whole base on his own and was just kind of like, I don't know, it seemed very unrealistic to me. And I know that there are like great warriors in Westeros, and I get that, but like it was very fantastical and less grounded, in my opinion. Like, it just seemed very not realistic to me. And normally I find combat is fairly realistic in Game of Thrones. So
I sort of threw realism out the window for that one, because realism, one person charging your gates isn't going to be answered with a hail of arrows. That's just bad.
Yeah, I don't. The whole sequence
You're going to send out
was kind of like
people at them.
It was kind of like it was kind of childish. I found it was kind of it was something that you would get.
To me.
I found it was something more you would get out of like a very fantastical type of I don't know. I thought it was childish. I thought the whole sequence in the battle was very like unrealistic, and I actually didn't enjoy most of it, and that was my biggest gripe with this. Like, I thought it looked, once again, I thought the visuals were great, but like, if you told me just on paper, like, okay, so this is what he does. He's gonna wave a white flag over there. He's gonna get all the way there. Then he's just gonna fucking take on like, 50 dudes and fucking run all over the place and whatever. They're going to shoot a ton of arrows at him. He's going to end up being fine. And then an army comes in, saves him. He runs over, grabs the crab guy, kills him pretty quickly, brings him out. Like, it was just kind of like, eh.
That was the part that I hated the most, was that we literally didn't see the confrontation with the crab feeder. You know, he goes into the cave and then Damon goes in after him, and then 30 seconds later he's out carrying like a eviscerated half of a, crab corpse. Like, what? Really?
Yeah, we missed getting we missed seeing a guy get cut in half. Damn it!
Even without that, I think there would have been, like, I understand sort of to the point we didn't want Damon talking at this point. Seems like sort of what they were going for, and I don't think they had that confrontation without talking to each other. So I guess if you don't want Damon talking, you can't really show that. But still, it felt sort of anticlimactic that this is, you've been building up the crab feeder as this bad guy for the first, third of the season, and you beat him in 30 seconds in a cave we don't see. Like, oh.
So I've got a couple of thoughts on that. The first one being, I think it was the guerrilla warfare that made the crab feeder who he is. He was not ever supposed to be a hand-to-hand combat type of leader. He was going to be the one that attacks you from the shadows. He's going to be the one that uses the terrain to his advantage. And up until that point, he had been doing that, and like even refused to come out and face Damon when Damon was taunting him at the beginning of the episode. Like he straight up decided, nope, I'm not coming out. I'm not meeting you face to face. And when he finally does end up meeting Damon face to face, he doesn't stand a fucking chance. And so, like, I think part of this has been building up on Damon's end, where you see him as a vengeful wild card type of character, like what we see with the Kingsguard in episode 1, and like what we see when he basically bashes the other guys, like the delivery guy of the messenger. He bashes his head in basically when he gets the message from his brother. Like we really don't know what to expect from Damon other than scene stealing. And I think Sean's right that maybe for the sake of what they were trying to do with this episode, he would have definitely wanted to say something to the crab feeder. And the episode was trying to be built around the action sequences and the cinematography over the dialogue at this point. Do I think we'll get a flashback or something? Probably not. But I do think, considering what I saw in the episode 4 preview, there's definitely a big discussion that's going to happen in the Red Keep's throne room. And perhaps at some point when Matt Smith is given opportunity for dialogue, he may give his brother or he may give Rhaenyra some sort of a description of what transpired in the cave. And that may be where we get some exposition on what dialogue transpired. So I do think that gap will get filled in some way. But I get where you're coming from, that it probably would have been interesting to see it happen in the moment as well. So it's interesting that this sequence is kind of divisive among the panel. Sean, what were your thoughts on it? I didn't really hear your thoughts on the battle sequence itself. What did you make of it? Are you like in favor of it, or did you find it kind of hard to enjoy it?
I don't know if I want to get into like what's realistic and what's not. I mean, I like Star Wars lightsaber battles, and most of them are nowhere close to realistic. So I thought in terms of like just sword on sword fighting, I don't know if Game of Thrones has ever given one person such a just massive push, I guess you could say. He mows guys down, although I'm not sure the people that he's mowing down are supposed to be able to really take them.
Right.
They're not Damon. A bunch of them are guys like us following,
They're not knights. He's slaughtering free folk, basically.
Yeah, and obviously he's going to get slaughtered at the end when he's surrounded there. There's too many of them, but I thought it was okay what they did, and I thought they still found a way to show him vulnerable. He gets hit with an arrow, it goes right through his leg. I also think we're just supposed to see that, yeah, he can be a piece of shit, but you know what? You also probably don't want to fuck with him if you piss him off too. So
Right.
Wasn't the leg arrow at the beginning? So he took it in the shoulder and the rib plate.
No, he got one through the back of his knee in that fight at the end. And then he snaps it off when he's hiding under the whatever that was he was hiding underneath.
A charred boat corpse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he has a bit of a hobble to him when he runs after the crab eater. So he's wounded and he still takes him out fairly easily. I thought the end sequence was fantastic. It was everything that you could ask for. This is only episode 3. Like, if you think they're blowing their load on episode 3 in terms of their massive action pieces, that's just not happening. It's still going to continue to get bigger, and bigger. And we didn't have anything remotely close to this Game of Thrones 3 episodes in, and this felt similar to Daenerys and the Dothraki just sacking the Lannisters. I enjoyed it. I did not have any complaints about it, other than did Daemon maybe seem a little god mode? Kinda, but again, I made a reference.
Plot armor's real thick sometimes.
Yeah, plot armor, and there's the hey, if you're gonna fight a guy, you better know how to fight. Don't pick someone to fight that person who doesn't know how to fight, or you're probably gonna get your fucking clock cleaned. And I don't know. We'd have to go back and look.
Maybe one of the crab eater guys should have bit him.
I just mean in general though, like, dude who fights and has training 99% of the time is going to beat the guy who does not. And I'd have to go back and rewatch the battle sequence again, but I know it seems like he cuts down like 50 guys, but realistically, I think it's, maybe 7 or 8. And I don't necessarily think that's that unfeasible. I would argue that Jon Snow does similar things.
Just say this sort of had
around him.
This had very much Battle of the Bastards feel.
Yep.
To me, that's what I felt watching it.
Yep.
I honestly, like, a lot more of it just had to do with the fact that he had to sprint like a couple football fields to get there and then do it. That kind of like he seemed a little bit overpowered. I don't know. It was one of those things. It's the same problem I had with the goddamn Boba Fett in The Mandalorian, just destroying stormtroopers. Yeah, like, he should be able to defeat a bunch of stormtroopers. They suck. Everyone knows they suck. But the way he did it was just like he was a god. He was everywhere. He was fucking teleporting and shit and doing backflips. He was like a Power Ranger. Like, it's the same thing. When I saw it, I was like, this looks like he's some sort of Greek god or something like that. It looks like he's like, it looks like he's got some sort of special power to do this. And that's just the feeling I got from it.
I loved the moment at the beginning where the guy gets, the stake put through him, through his hand there. He's nailed to the cross. Yeah. The Daemon's is...
Here, my prince. Here.
Daemon's Caraxes, right? Is that the
dragon? Yeah.
Caraxes. And then Rhaenyra is Syrax. Is that right?
Yes.
So, like, I thought he was just going to light the guy on fire, right? Because he's just blowing everything away. I'm like, oh, he's not going to do it. Cool. And then he crosses him. And I
lands on him.
Like, as a bit of an anime fan and a Dragon Ball fan, I just thought to myself, that is so Vegeta there, that moment. And I
have saved you from a slow, painful death with a
That could be a good comparison. Death. Daemon and Vegeta.
I think it's closer than you think it is.
think that could work.
I mean, I'd say later season Vegeta, not not original Arrival. I'm actually a villain, Vegeta, but later seasons. I live here. This is my planet. I'm married to one of you people. God, I have to fight for you. Give me a challenge, Vegeta.
I wish I understood those references.
Sweet. What Zach is saying here is more Dragon Ball references in future episodes, please.
So, like, did anybody else notice that the crab feeder looked like Sal?
You guys can make all these references you want for episodes 5 and 6, because I'm not going to fucking be here.
No, we're not gonna make a single awkward reference that you wouldn't understand for those episodes. And you're gonna come back and be like, really, really, and then we'll just go heavy as soon as you get back.
Sure.
Basically,
While you're gone, we'll make Jurassic Park references the whole time.
basically a guy that's interpreted as a villain to a lot of people, who comes across as like a piece of shit that people might think cares about no one, but truth is deep down he cares a lot more than people give him credit for, and that's the comparison that we were just making there.
Yeah, I never would have made that connection at all, because when you say the name, I was just thinking of melted cheese.
That's Velveeta. That's a different thing altogether.
Great cheese to put in your meatloaf, by the way. Fantastic.
Ugh. You eat meatloaf on purpose? Ugh.
Only one I make.
What?
What? Meatloaf's bad?
What is with this anti-meatloaf stance?
I have not once in my life ever had a decent meatloaf. Not once.
Have you eaten a good home-cooked meatloaf? I mean,
I have had plenty of homemade meatloafs, and they've
by
all,
people who can cook?
yes, because I've had other dishes that they've made. But
I feel
meatloaf,
bad for you, man.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah.
dude, good luck trying to ship that internationally.
Maybe I'll just give you the recipe. You can make it yourself and see if it turns out decent.
You know what? If it's got Velveeta in it, maybe so. Okay, let's switch out of obscure references that I won't understand and
No
recipes
more cheese?
that I'm probably not going to actually make.
Meatloaf talk.
Mondo's going to watch it later and be like, what the hell, man?
Only if I put mayo in it.
Are we doing the cheese of the week now?
Oh, Sean got it. Oh, Sean's got it. He's deceased now. Okay. That made my night right there.
I'm gonna survive at that point.
Final thoughts and champion of the week will be the first thing we do around the horn, gents, and then we'll close it with our scores and our socials. Kieran, final thoughts and your champion of the week.
It's kind of a little bit more enjoyable talking about it now, to be honest. But I think I'm just gonna go with a 7 out of 10, which is what I gave last week's episode. So that kind of makes it almost a holding pattern, I guess. And my champion is Viserys. I thought the acting done by Patty was some of the best in this episode. Really enjoyed the contemplation, and I thought that the character advanced more than any other character in this episode. But just in general, like I'm just hoping some characters step up to the plate and show me something to cheer for. That's all. So just really like. I remember watching the first episode of Game of Thrones. Like I remember pretty vividly, like right away, being like, "Oh, I love Ned. He's an amazing character." Like right away, I started to like Jon. Right away, started to kind of like enjoy the interactions between Theon and Robb and them, and like I started like right away. I was like, I like these characters. Like they seem like decent, interesting characters. I can see dynamics in between them that are building that I like, and that hasn't happened so far in the show for me. So I'm hoping it'll happen. And those are my thoughts.
I think I'm gonna stick, much like you're sort of in that holding pattern. Only my holding pattern is apparently half a point higher than his, so I'm still at an 8. It hasn't, like we've said, this is the prologue. This is setting the table for what's to come later, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Everything has just sort of been. Flat has such a connotation that I don't like, because it hasn't been flat. It has been very good. But, as far as my rating scale goes, it has stayed flat, and I'm content with that as we, keep building we keep building the world. This is a much different world than we see. Nearly 200 years later in Game of Thrones, the crown actually has money. That's something we've never seen before. So there's just so much going on that I love, that I enjoy. You're seeing parallels to characters in Game of Thrones that are good. Obviously Otto and Littlefinger have their comparisons, but the one that doesn't get a lot of love is Sir Strong is giving off Varys vibes, and I like that. He's playing the game right. He's actually playing the game. He's trying to further, the crown's import and settle issues instead of create issues, and he's not pushing forward his own house. He's just trying to push forward the best options, which is something that Otto will never do. All of this in advance of the House Hightower. But MVP of the episode for me, it's gonna sound because he hardly anything, but it's because even though he didn't say very much, he had so much impact on this episode for me that he hardly said anything, yet I feel like he said a lot. Because like I said, he spoke through his actions, and they were very loud, and they were very important and good, and I loved them. And seeing Matt Smith get all bloody and go through battle, and it's a side of Matt Smith I haven't really got to see before, and I love it, and I want to see more of it. And yeah, Matt Smith, Daemon Targaryen, my MVP.
This one was a little tougher for me because I think you could make a point on Viserys just from Paddy Considine's performance in the episode. I thought it's very, very good. He does a lot of small, important things very, very good in the episode. And you get the character's frustration too. But then, Rhaenyra also has a lot to do in this episode. And then the White Stag moment towards the end is just so moving. At least for me, it was. But I don't know how you can side against Matt Smith in this episode. The visual storytelling that he has an opportunity to do in this episode is some of the best that we've seen in this world. And even though I've now picked him, and this will be my second time picking him, I think Matt Smith is worthy of 2 of the 3 episodes being champion so far. And I'm sure that'll switch up as we go, but at the moment, him and Millie Alcock are just blowing up all over social media.
I wouldn't be surprised if, among the 4 of us, he, at the end of the season, was the guy that we voted for the most. Like, think he's the front runner so far, so I wouldn't blame you if you were putting him over half the weeks,
He and Millie Alcock are the ones that are kind of carrying the show for sure. Sean, we ended up kind of bunching our thoughts and our scores together in the last 2 interactions. What kind of a score would you give this one?
I'd give it an 8. I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I wouldn't feel right giving it any more than that, but I thought it was a classic Game of Thrones episode, except for you got some of those big action pieces in it. They don't last super, super long, but they're impressive, and we get really, really good storytelling in it. So I think 8 out of 10 is a solid episode. Again, I know people get on people for giving things like 7, 7.5, or even an 8, but like not every episode is going to be a 9 or 10. And if your Game of Thrones episode is 7 or 8 out of 10, that's still a pretty fucking good episode, in my opinion.
Yep. When I first went to go look for trivia and stuff from this episode, there were about 2,500, 2,800 reviews that had come in from users on IMDb. And at that point, it was listing that episode as a 9.8. I just hit the refresh button to double check it just now. 22,000 reviews have come in, and the average is 9.1, which is still probably, I want to say it's the highest, if not the second highest rating. I think maybe episode 1 has like a 9.2 or a 9.3. But it's definitely one of the higher up there ratings that we're probably going to see this season. So it was very well received, and I think this whole show has been well received up to this point. But I think I'm gonna kind of go with the crowd and give this one an 8 as well, because I personally don't care for sandwich storytelling, and I made that reference off of the top of the episode that this kind of felt like a sandwich episode. You've got crab feeder and stepstones action happening at the beginning, and it happens again at the end, and then the hunt and the stuff with Viserys, Rhaenyra, all of them is happening in the middle. I don't like sandwich storytelling. I don't want you to tell me B story, A story, B story. I want it interwoven. I want it mixed up. I want to be able to cut and see some of the struggle happening on the stepstones and then go back to Viserys struggling with whether he should send help or not. Because then you just saw a scene that's like, bitch, yes, you should be sending help. Or it'd be like, no, like he's getting what he deserves. Like I don't like how clean cut the scene selection was.
So
And
you don't like crab, you don't like sandwiches, you don't like meatloaf.
That's
What's your deal, man? What's your deal?
That was the point I was making earlier, though, about the pacing. Zach had mentioned it's probably the way I watched it, and it didn't help my viewing. That's for sure. Watching it, in 2.5 hours, but the bookend storytelling, I've never been a fan of that type of storytelling. Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom does it. The Rise of Skywalker does it. The most recent Pirates of the Caribbean does it. It just seems like a lazy way of doing it instead of interweaving everything. And I know some people love the bookend storytelling. I'm not one of them. I think it's this show specifically. I don't like them doing that. I'm with Zach on that one, and it lost some points for me on that.
well, and that's also kind of what I meant when I gave some of my initial impressions, is that there's a few things technically that this show could clean up. There are some storytelling and scene selections that could be cleaned up a little bit. There are times when you have something that's very dialogue heavy that maybe you're adding stuff in there for the sake of being able to hear yourself talk. And then there's moments later on in the episode where there's almost no talking, where you feel like it needs some. And so like the selection of when to put something in versus when not to put something in was very prevalent in this episode for me. And
Oh,
so I just there are things technically like scene selection, shot selection, verbiage selection that I got taken out of it a little bit, feeling like, you know what, this doesn't feel like Game of Thrones. This doesn't feel like it's up to the level of the type of writing and pacing that we get from the original Game of Thrones show. And Sean, I know that you said, over a year ago that if this show was 75 to 80% of the show that the original Game of Thrones was, then it would still be a good show. And it is. But that's still pretty much about what I've got it at. Is it's somewhere in the 75 to 80%, 7.5 to 8 out of 10 type of rating, compared to some of the stuff that I've rated previous Game of Thrones seasons and Game of Thrones episodes. So it's an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it, but I do have like legitimate gripes for it. My champion is going to be a bit of a dark horse. I'm actually picking Laenor Valerian. I liked his interactions that he had at the strategy table at the Stepstones, and I liked that he provided the reinforcements that took out the Crab Feeder's men, rather than Daemon doing something like summoning Caraxes out of nowhere. Like, he had a role to play in this episode, and he played his role well and helped ensure the victory that was needed at the Stepstones. So he was also a big factor in who Rhaenyra should marry. Lord Strong brought up his name when he was conversing with the king, saying, "This is who Rhaenyra should marry. He is of pure Valyrian descent, and it would be a good match, and it would help, repair the damage that's been done between these two houses." So I think he had a important role to play in multiple parts of this episode, and he played that role well. So Laenor Valerian is my champion.
I liked him. I think people should get ready for that character to have a lot more play moving forward.
He is about to. I really think this was like a setup for something more for his character. So I'm excited for that.
That's what I'm
So
hoping
I-
for.
Not just when you guys. So there's certain things that like you and Kieran will say that just line up to probably make Johnny want to say something, and you got to do your
There
best.
are a great many times I've come very close to dropping an important comment that's like, no, I can't say that.
And that's not like ha 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 we know or anything, because anybody could know. I mean, the book's right fucking there.
Yep.
But it's difficult because you don't want to spoil it for anybody, but at the same time, you also don't know how many of those events are going to be a little bit different.
You've already seen that in this episode. It was Otto pushing forward the heir issue, whereas in the book it's Alicent.
Also, think about it this way: we talked about it in this episode how the first 5 episodes is essentially I believe they even said the first 6 episodes is kind of the prologue. But if
It makes sense that that's the grow up because that's the Sapochnik, right? 6, 7.
Yeah, which is interesting. He's not taken the penultimate or 10. So, the
I think that's who had this episode
who Sapochnik?
that has the penultimate. No, the same director as this one.
Oh well, then great because his the visuals were fantastic, and
Either that or the finale. It's one of the two.
penultimate episodes in Game of Thrones have always been
Traditionally, yeah.
a big step up. I just
So you're saying
really
you're saying that Damon's gonna go Super Saiyan and kill 500 people in the
maybe
last battle of this next one?
I don't even know where they go with the last battle of this one. Now that this one's already out of the way, if I'm being honest, I just hope people are patient because, like, for me, I don't have this series at like 75-80%. I have this series at like 90% of where Game of Thrones was. And I'll be honest, if you compare this to Game of Thrones season 1 and you take every aspect into it, not just storytelling, every aspect, score, sound design, set design, cinematography, it's not close. This is miles ahead of Game of Thrones. But Game of Thrones, I think, didn't even like that entire, and I could be wrong on this. I believe the entire first season of Game of Thrones was shot for $10 million, which means
Something like that.
half of an episode of this is what Game of Thrones, less than half of an episode of this is what Game of Thrones costs. So, like, comparing it like that, the overall thing, it's not the same. But if you're just going on stories and characters, Game of Thrones is still a leg up for sure. But I mean, this always happens, guys. I know we're trying to wrap here, but I've been on this channel enough and I've been on other channels enough to know that whenever there's a fucking follow-up, whether it's a prequel or a sequel, everyone's got to fucking put the original on some pedestal. Oh, Lord of the Rings is the best. Oh, Star Wars is the best. Oh, X2, you'll never do better than X2. Halloween, it's always the original Halloween. There's a fucking bad bias in fandom that just always puts the original on a pedestal. Sometimes fairly, but most of the times not. And like, I don't want to judge the pizza before it's fully cooked because half-cooked pizza sucks. Send it the fuck back. Just be honest here.
We're all making food references really late at night. I don't know what's wrong with us.
Zach's about to tell us, like, you don't fucking eat pizza, like fucking stupid pizza.
Actually, I don't. I'm allergic to pineapple. I haven't had pizza in 15 years.
Oh,
You
man.
can have pizza without pineapple.
No,
Yeah.
like,
Like,
Dude, like the only kind I can have is like store-bought frozen pizza, and a lot of people would claim that that's not actual pizza. But if somebody so much as like rolls a Hawaiian pizza with their roller and then rolls mine, I get sick and end up in the hospital. So
All right, guys. Next week, what the fuck does Zach eat? We gotta have us.
tacos.
I
since we
Get out of
Makes
legitimate
sense. Yes,
legitimate
that makes sense for Texas.
street tacos. I could out-eat all of you at street tacos.
to be clear, this goes both ways though. Like specifically, putting the original form of any IP on a pedestal is a very bad habit because guess what? Sometimes sequels are better. The Empire fucking Strikes Back is proof of that.
Godfather 2.
That too. It took me, 30 plus years to see it, but yeah. I just want people to be patient. That includes the people praising it too. Well, I have it at like 90% of what Game of Thrones was. Guess what? If episode fucking 7, 8, 9 all fall on their ass, it's not 90% of Game of Thrones. But if 7, 8, and 9 is spectacular, you might go, wow, look what they did in one season of television. I'm just not ready to make that comparison yet, but it's a massive hill to climb. It's a big expectation to think that this show is going to be as good as Game of Thrones on every level, specifically storytelling. When I would argue Game of Thrones is the most rewatchable TV show and highest quality TV show ever made. Big thing to live up to, and so far I think they're doing pretty good.
Since we talked about it so much in there, the penultimate episode is directed by Claire Kilner, who has episodes 4 or 5.
Interesting.
So the director of this one, Philip, I think. Oh God, I had his name right. Greg. I can't even. That last name is
See,
yeah,
I had all
Dennis?
this. I had
Johnny's
all of that
brother.
information up, and then I closed my windows 10 minutes ago because I thought we were fucking rapping.
Greg Yaitanis. I don't know. He's the one who had this episode. He has the finale of the season.
Obviously, we are huge fans of this franchise and could go on talking about it indefinitely, but we all have other things that we need to get to and that we need to tend to. And if we talk about everything tonight, then there's no reason for an episode next week. So let's go ahead and cut ourselves off tonight. Not the way Theon got cut off, but let's just cut off the conversation. Say our outros, say our goodnights, and get ready to see people next week for another rousing edition of House of the Empire. Kieran, thanks for sticking it out with us. What else have you got going on?
I just did the first episode Rick and Morty fan show. I was losing my voice halfway through it, so it's just a short 20-minute episode, but had some of my old friends come out and view that. So if you're a big fan of Rick and Morty, come right after the episode airs. Episode airs at 11 Eastern on Adult Swim and a few other places. And then right after the episode airs, come and visit me here, and I'll rant about it. We had a good old time. So that's what's going on for me, and first day of school tomorrow. So.
Oh, it's finally here. We've had it for 2 weeks. Johnny, how about you?
Oh man, you can find me here, there, and everywhere. But Bros Before Pros over on Twitch. We're grinding towards affiliate.
Alrighty. Sean, I know that you've made an announcement recently. Do you want to repeat that to the loyal folks that are tuning in here?
I'm going to be blunt. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Just
sorry.
You've made a statement public on Phantom Empire that you're taking kind of a reduced role right now because of family related issues and
Yeah, I mean, my fiance gave birth to our daughter. It's basically a week ago. So life has changed. Thank you. Life has definitely changed. It's the most incredibly rewarding thing you can ever go through, though. I stand by that. And family comes first. To be honest, it was nice to not really do anything with the channel for a week and just focus on family time. I know it can't always be like that, but it was nice. And you know what? The channel is in capable hands. Zach leads the way on House of the Empire. A combination of Jared, Kieran, and Johnny have Dark Match Drive. Kieran and Mike will be leading the Phantom Empire show going forward. I'll still be on that show, by the way, and probably a fair amount, but it's easier for me to get the hell out of here and just be a panelist and go help out when I need to help out than it is to be a moderator, and then it leaves everybody stranded, especially if not everybody's caught up on notes or anything. So, yeah, also one more relevant thing on the Game of Thrones franchise before we go off, because there's a lot of misinformation out there about this. Miguel Sapochnik is out as showrunner of House of the Dragon after this season. There's no bad feelings or anything. He's going through some similar family-related stuff, and he spent 3 years launching this one. He is staying on as an executive producer, and to quote him, no, it's not just a title. He's actually going to be having some say in what goes on. There's rumors about him being involved in the Jon Snow show, and But the other thing that's not getting enough play is Alan Taylor is coming in as co-showrunner, who has more fingerprints over Game of Thrones than Mikhail Sapochnik had. Sapochnik had the big episodes, but Alan Taylor is a massive part of a lot of those episodes. And I could be wrong, but I might be wrong on this one. But Alan Taylor might have did the Red Wedding. I'm not sure off the top of my head. He's done a ton of Game of Thrones.
You can't say shit like that because Johnny's down there looking it up now.
I hope he does.
Well, I was as we speak. He did 7 episodes. Baylor, Fire and Blood, The North Remembers.
Baylor?
Yep.
Oh.
The North Remembers, The Nightlands, The Prince of Winterfell, Valar Morghulis, and Beyond the Wall.
Ha! Ha! Yeah, Beyond the Wall. Suck it, Kieran. Sorry, I'm done. He hates that episode. I love it. So.
I think we're all done. So we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Thanks to everybody that tuned in to this episode of House of the Empire. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed putting it on for you, because we've been at it for almost 2 hours now. But you can keep up with us by following and hitting like and subscribe and keeping up on the socials to know exactly when new episodes are dropping. And you can join the Patreon for a lot more exclusives as well. So go ahead and do all of those things if you haven't done it already, so that you can be as involved in this production as you can possibly be without actually being on the show. As for me, you can find me on socials at Zach the Voice, Z-A-C-H the Voice, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that good stuff. Depending on the social you follow, you may see different content. So like the Facebook feed is going to be high school football broadcasting. The Twitter feed is just going to be whatever random thought pops into my head. The Instagram feed will probably be wedding related stuff. I'm getting married in like under 2 weeks as of the recording of this episode. So a lot of stuff going on. So just follow the socials to find out exactly what's coming up next. But I'll be here for next week's episode and be gone for a couple of weeks after that for, obvious reasons. But I'll try to be as involved in the chat section and on the socials as much as I can in between those appearances. And Sean is about as tired and blurry as his camera is now. So we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Thanks so much for tuning in to House of the Empire. For Kieran and Johnny and Sean, that's Fuzzy Sean. We'll see you all next time when the Empire returns.